Make sure it's going. Okay, so today is June 13th, 2024. Can I have your full name, please?
Christopher Martin Schmidt.
Awesome. And when were you born?
August 13, 1943.
So you're another Leo. We're August babies ourselves here. August 7th, August 6th. So you're in good. You're in good.
I love it.
And where were you born?
Born in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay. And where did you attend high school?
I actually was in a small town. By that time, we moved down to a farm in a town called St. Genevieve, Missouri. And that's about 50 miles south of St. Louis. So when I was 1 year old, I had moved with my family down there. And I don't remember anything about St. Louis except visiting relatives. So St. Genevieve is a Catholic, French Catholic type of town on the Mississippi River. And so I had a lot of experience with Mississippi history and stuff like that. So anyway, I was in a class of 50 in my class, and it was, everyone knew everybody and everything about everybody. So typical country type school.
I grew up in a town like that too. So what year did you graduate high school?
1961.
And so in your time in high school, so I'm assuming you went to high school from 57 to 61. Did you learn anything about Vietnam or about communism in general in high school? Did you have any frame of reference?
No.
Okay.
None whatsoever.
After high school, did you go to college?
I did. I was 5.5 years in college.
And where did you go to college?
Southeast Missouri State College at that time. Now it's university.
Okay. And what did you study?
I was a biochemist.
Interesting.
And I did graduate work with a relatively Missouri famous professor, and so I helped him in his his research work.
Okay.
And it was part of my follow-on learning and teaching and stuff like that. So.
Okay, so you were in college for 5.5 years. In that time, did you keep like a pulse on the, on Vietnam and the increasing activity in Vietnam?
I did. Remember, I was in a very small town. Mm-hmm. This is very unique. One of my classmates, Eldon Smith, his mother was in charge of the local selective service board, a whole board of one. And she knew my family much better than I ever knew until I actually got drafted. And at that time, she arranged an appointment with me in college. I was in my 5th year, and she came down from my town to the university, and it was 80 miles, so it was no little chore. And she let me know that for 3 years she hid my draft card and was successful until she had a surprise audit, and they found my draft card and said to either draft him or we're going to do it ourselves. So I got drafted, and she came down to let me know my alternatives. And I did not have to go into the Army, I found out. She told me literally to go to my favorite branch of service office, to the recruiter, tell them what happened, and arrange a enlistment time of that. Well, since I graduated of the university already, I was eligible to be an officer. And so I selected the Air Force. They went ahead and I went to the main induction center in St. Louis, Missouri, downtown. And that's where everyone in the whole state went to be inducted. And I literally showed my Air Force acceptance to the Army inductor, and he said, "Oh, you're in the wrong line," and he moved me over to the Air Force line. And so that's how I started. And it was my first assignment was actually right here in Arizona, at Ajo, down here, down the road. And I learned a career in what they call a ground control intercept operating at that time. I was not a navigator then. What happened is I went to the controller school in Florida. They sent me therefore to Ajo to do the actual service, and I worked with Luke Air Force Base, Davis-Monthan, all the air bases that had anything to do with interceptors. And so we were responsible for maintaining our vigilance with Air Defense Command at that time. They no longer have Air Defense Command. And I would intercept enemy aircraft coming in with our own friendly interceptors and guide them to the proper position to complete the intercept. Well, that role, when it came to Vietnam, which was my next tour, it was expected I would be also doing that and typical military air traffic control. I was a glorified air traffic controller in Vietnam or Thailand. I was stationed on a mountaintop called Khao Yai, which is in Thai, Green Mountain. And
was it green?
oh, elephants walked up and down. We had tigers. We had all the jungle stuff. And
what year was that you go there to
I,
Thailand?
1968.
Okay.
And we had the largest volume of air traffic from our military bases going into Vietnam of any location of all the radar sites that were there.
Why do you think that was so? Was it just your
Because
location?
we were in the location that allowed the highest elevation. We could see everything, east, west, everywhere.
Okay.
And when you talk about radar, it's always how much can you see and how far can you see.
Okay.
So the higher the elevation, the better the visibility.
So in 1968, when you arrived to Thailand, how long have you been in the Air Force at this point?
2 years.
2 years, okay.
2 years.
So you're in Thailand for that first tour, and are you there for 13 months? Or how long were your tours?
I was there on a extended, at that time, to allow for a selection of my own base afterwards.
I see,
And so if you extended for a few months, you would get a choice of the base from a list of ones. And so I picked that choice and stayed there longer.
Okay.
So our main objective in Thailand was to provide proper control and safety of aircraft for us, because we were also under a threat of MiG intervention from North Vietnam and we only had a few encounters, but we had to be ready in case they came down to shoot our own friendly aircraft.
So there were times then that the MiGs would come into Thailand?
Yes, not Thailand per se, unless they were under a attack. So we literally would try to intercept them ahead of time and force them to go where we wanted them to go.
Okay.
And so I personally, luckily, I guess, in some respects, never had to do an air-to-air combat type control The base up north of us called Udorn, that one did. Udorn is right on the northern border.
I'm looking at the map right now.
Okay.
So, were there any confirmed U.S. Air Force members that were killed in Thailand due to any issues with
Oh, yeah.
MiGs? Yes.
Now they have a counterpart of Viet Cong in Thailand called Thai Cong.
Oh, okay.
And the counterpart there were very invasive. They usually came in from Cambodia. And Khao Yai, the mountain, was right on a few miles from the border of Cambodia. And we were alerted to one encounter of ground forces that were going to overtake our radar site on Khao Yai. And so we managed to overcome that with the aid of the Thai military that were there. They were there to guard us as much as we were to help them.
So it's interesting you bring up Cambodia. So your first tour is in '68, but you went back in '70, right?
I was a navigator in 70, 71.
So did you notice an uptick in any activity after Nixon expanded the war into Cambodia? Did that impact you guys in Thailand?
Not anymore. No, not significantly. Not significantly. It would. What it required was more vigilance, but it didn't really require any more troops or any other dedicated service of any kind.
Okay, and so what's different? Tell us what's different about being a navigator in that second tour versus your first tour. Like, how was that different for you as a airman?
Well, I was a first lieutenant in the first tour. I was a captain as a navigator in the second time. Now, I did not get in on the first. As a navigator, I didn't go in right away. We had other people that deployed from our location at Okinawa directly to Vietnam to help them for 3 months at a time, then we rotate.
Okay.
When it came to my turn to rotate into there, it was right at the end of the war in 72. So I learned all the tactics. I did everything that I needed to do to complete my mission. However, I didn't have to go ahead and actually exercise that.
Because of the Paris Peace Accords?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
And we actually were in a 4-ship formation, going down the runway, already on our way to Thailand, and we got about a third of the way down the runway, and the tower yells, "Aboard, aboard, aboard!" And we had to all 4 of us pop our chutes at once and taxi in and find out that's when the official end of the war was.
Wow, talk about timing for you.
Yeah, I
so
know.
How did that make you feel though? Like, did you want to go on this mission?
Actually, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
we get ready and geared up for all that.
Yeah.
We would do practice missions in the Philippines, in Korea, in anywhere we could, and we would know that we were ready. So, yeah, it was one of those things that you anticipate. You're not necessarily looking forward to it, but you know that this is your turn. And so we rotate on a schedule. I was up next, and just so happened I was in that last wave.
Well, you lucked out then.
I did.
In a way.
It was something that I don't regret, doing, but I think it's just part of the military experience. I stayed in 20 years, and I fully expected to have other encounters, conflicts, or things that I would need to do to help out the U.S. in whatever they needed. Vietnam, to me, there were so many things that we just didn't talk about or didn't try and reminisce and go on about with other people forever. And I actually talked more about it when I had my other service dog, Lily. She was also a therapy dog. And I would go into hospitals with veterans and stuff. They would talk to me more than anybody that they ever talked with. And that was the biggest time I would ever talk about military encounters in Vietnam. And so, yeah, it's just not a normal conversation thing that
Yeah.
you do.
So while you were in Thailand for both your tours, this might seem like an odd question, but did you ever interact with any South Vietnamese Army military personnel?
No.
You only dealt with the American military?
Or the Thai.
Or the Thai,
military.
okay. So, so that's gonna lead me to my next question then. So you talked about how you were getting ready to go on this mission, and then the Paris Peace Accords happened. So that would have been January '73-ish.
Yeah, I was. I can't give you the exact
That's
date
okay.
and month. Yeah.
But so then, how much longer did you stay in Thailand after that?
I wasn't ever. I didn't. In other words, when they abort that mission, you don't go there. Period.
Okay.
It was abort, and so the second time I never set foot in Thailand.
Okay. So how much longer were you in Southeast Asia? Like when did you get
There
to go
you
back
go.
to the United
Southeast
States?
Asia. I came back in '74.
In '74. So you stayed then for another year in
Yep.
Okinawa, I'm assuming?
Yes.
And then what did you do that year? Was it just support for like the wind
Well,
down?
we did missions in against North Korea. And I mean this seriously, we did very, at that time, very secretive. I was in reconnaissance, and we did very secretive reconnaissance missions along the DMZ in South Korea, and purposely flew within 1 mile of the DMZ to antagonize the North Koreans, get them to reveal their SAM sites, and then us take pictures with a very high-tech camera.
That's kind of interesting.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
We're only 2 cameras in the world like that one, and one was in Israel and one we had.
So
And
when you were doing those, were you a navigator still?
I was.
Okay.
They call them WSOs, weapon system officers.
Wow, that's really interesting that you were there for that year doing those North Korean DMZ flybys. That's interesting.
I believe it or not, went from there into B-52, so I had quite a range in aircraft.
So you're there through '74, and then you come back to the U.S., but you stay in the Air Force, you said, for 20 years.
Yes.
So what did you do when you came back stateside then?
I was in B-52H models in Michigan.
Okay.
And I flew 4 years up there, had some very interesting missions. That was the latest and most advanced model of the B-52 at that time. And you may or may not know, they have continued to upgrade them and keep them flying at least to the year 2030.
Okay. Interesting. So when you get back, well, let me ask you another question. So some Vietnam veterans that served in Vietnam have sued because of exposure to Agent Orange. Did you ever feel you were exposed?
I was not.
You were not.
I
That's
had
good.
a nephew who died from it, though.
Okay, so there were people you know that were exposed
Oh,
to it.
very much.
Okay. So when you came home from Vietnam, even though you served in a support role in Thailand and Okinawa, did you get any negativity from the general public when you return home?
I did.
Can you, if you want to talk about that a little bit?
Our landing, anytime we returned to the States from that area, South Pacific, it was always at Travis Air Force Base, San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And there was never, let's say, a warm welcome to any of that at that time. We were warned not to wear our uniforms in public, and because of that type of uh, possible interaction or chastisement, and didn't want to create unnecessary friction, you know. So it is what it is, and at that era, uh, the flower child was going strong, and peace to the world and stuff like that. And the war in Vietnam just didn't fit in with anything.
Yeah. Did you, after you came back and got, reintegrated back into society, if you will, did you really talk a lot about your service at all, or was it something that you felt maybe I shouldn't really talk about this?
Only with other military
Okay.
friends, and hardly anything with my family other than location, general. My mother really did not want to, dwell on anything like that, and so she was a really good foundation for my beliefs in and care about people throughout my whole life. And so I never felt the need to share with her any of the problems that we had served in there. It wouldn't have served any good purpose.
A theme I've noticed with several veterans is throughout the 80s, it was kind of like not something a lot of people publicly talked about the war in Vietnam, and then as time started to pass, more and more people seemed to be more open about talking about the war. There's more books about it, movies. It seemed in that initial decade after the fall of Saigon that it was something socially society didn't want to talk about.
Well,
is that something you felt as a veteran?
I did, and very, very dramatically. It was just an accepted thing that it was not a subject that you needed to bring up, nor promote as something that had to be talked about.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you come back in '74, and then Saigon falls in April of '75, is that something you followed? And did you have any thoughts about when Saigon fell? How did you feel? I
followed it real well all the time I was in Okinawa, because we were so close. Mm-hmm. When I got back to stateside in Michigan, it went pretty much behind me.
Okay.
And so the answer is we are always aware of it. It was always a briefing item in our tactical rooms that we would, we had daily military briefings, and it might be a subject during that, but we would never dwell on it.
Okay, because I've seen some people talk about how that was really painful to see Saigon fall, where other men were like you, it's behind me, moving forward. So that's why I asked that, because I'm just curious your thought. And then I'd like your personal view on what do you think of the overall involvement of the U.S. in Vietnam? Do you think that it was a mistake? Was it a middle ground? What's your personal thought? No right or wrong answers here.
I got to know the Thai people real well, and I got to actually learn the language pretty well. So I could interchange ideas with them, and through that interchange, I actually learned their viewpoint, and they were very much for it, and it kind of rubbed off into me a little bit. It was part of their freedom that we were also protecting at the same time as the Vietnam.
Because, do you mean in the sense of kind of the idea of the domino theory, that we were keeping it from?
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay, that's a good perspective.
Absolutely. We weren't allowed to go into Laos, for instance, and stuff that, and very, very clandestine efforts into Cambodia, but that was about it. But Thailand, I really respected and really liked the people of Thailand. They just didn't want to see the influence of the North Vietnamese to be carried over into their own government and society. So I was very much on their side, you know.
Well, that's understandable with your experience with serving in Thailand, and when you put it in the context of the Cold War and the domino theory, that's what the purpose of the war was to keep it from spreading.
Right.
So in some regards, we were successful because Thailand never does become a communist nation, but we weren't successful in keeping it out of the entirety of Vietnam
No.
with the fall of Saigon. What do you think were the legacies of the war on the United States? Like, as a country, like, what lessons did we learn and what should we have learned that we may not have learned?
Well, my difficulty with any of the, let's say, out-of-country conflicts is too much that are often into politics and not enough into the real reason for the war, which is usually meant to be the freedom of the people involved. And so, being in Thailand, I kind of had a vision of one country looking out over another type of thing. So my direct input into Vietnam, I didn't have that. And so I only could glean the opinion from people from Thailand. And so they were the ones that were really afraid that it would reach into their country, and they really didn't want it. That's why they were so supportive of the U.S. and the military there. It was really something they never wanted to encounter. So, looking back on it, I would say too often people here look at these conflicts through a microscope, and what I mean by that is they're picking out pieces here and there rather than taking a look at the whole overall picture of the nation as a whole. In politics, which I'm not a great politician, I don't want to be, is they try and look at the whole picture, and quite often they forget about the small impact of the little person. So that's what I've seen from this encounter is it is literally people are forgotten, and when there are incidents where people are massacred or villages are overrun, or it's always given in the worst light. And I don't know, it's just something that I never dwelled on because I just didn't, I never liked it, number one. I don't like to share all that stuff. I really don't, because it doesn't serve any good purpose except to maybe prevent the wrong things happening again.
Do you think that a lesson the country might have taken away from Vietnam is how we treat service members? Because it feels like after the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, there's been a push of welcoming veterans home and things like that. And to me, it feels like that is a lesson we learned, that it's not the veterans' fault that a war is going on. And so you may not agree with the war.
Well, I definitely know that my service to my country is more appreciated now than it has been for the first 10 or 15 years after I got out of the service, or right in my last 10 years of service.
Yeah.
So it's definitely something that has changed, and it's changed to the better. So I appreciate now the fact that most people that I meet every day, and I credit Lola as being one of my go-betweens. Is she actually allows people to talk when they may not want to talk directly to me, but they talk through her to me. And
Well, let's get Lola on camera here,
Oh,
and then
Lola.
let's talk a little bit more about her. So, how long have you had service dogs, and maybe tell us more about the benefits of your service dogs? Hi,
Well,
Lola.
I have had a service dog for over 15 years, and 5 years with my, look at her face. She-
She's looking right in the camera
Yeah.
too.
I have had a service dog for, okay, girl. Yes, I know.
Okay,
You can lay down.
you can lay back down now, Lola. Okay.
For over 15 years, and I had 2 medical conditions that required their help with me, and one of them is an eye disorder, another one is a serious balance issue, and so between the 2 of them, both of them have managed to not only provide me comfort, but have provided me real support and rescue efforts. Every time I've had to use her, where there's been a witness, all they can say is, wow, because they didn't know a dog could do the things that they could do. So I believe anybody who can and needs a dog, a service dog, should look into the avenues. In Phoenix, there are 2 that I know of that through proper channels they can get free service dogs. They usually have their own dog that is trained to help them. Any dog can be used to be a service dog. I have one friend with a hearing dog that's a Chihuahua, so they don't need to be big dogs, I have another friend who died who had an epileptic seizure dog, and she died from a seizure. But my point being is, I also have one who has a Great Dane, and the Great Dane provides physical support to be able to walk. Lola, actually, in the first 2 years when I could still walk, she had a mobility harness. I still have it. And we went to Denver, Colorado to have a custom fit on her. And so I could walk beside her, hold on to the handle, and she could keep me upright. So every use of not just a dog, but, well, the only 2 service animals recognized by legally are a miniature horse and a dog. And so I, of course, much prefer a dog.
You don't want to get the miniature horse? It sounds like it could really be helpful for more veterans to seek the help of a service
And
dog.
they should, and they can. And every large metropolitan area, like Tucson, they have one agency. And if they get through with the training of that dog, it usually takes 6 months of time. And Lola, she had 13 months of training. It's just a time-consuming effort, but every time that you go through it, it creates a closer bond. It creates a purpose for the dog, Lola, and she loves it. I mean, every dog, working dog, loves work, and that's part of the reward back to the recipient, the handler, me, is if she enjoys what she's doing, she'll give every ounce of her body to it,
She's a very good girl, and she's been very well behaved this whole time.
Oh, yeah.
So a couple just follow up to wrap up for questions I have for you is, when did you leave the military then? When did you retire?
October 1986.
And then what was your rank when you were leaving?
a captain.
You were captain, okay.
I was caught in what they call a rift. I don't know if you've heard of that. At the end of Vietnam, 1974 and 5, they started to cut back on the military in the service. In 1980, I got caught up in part of that rift reduction in force. And so I was given a choice at that time of just getting out of the service and taking what I could, doing what I could, or stay in the service, enlisted, and finishing out my career of 20 years, and then retiring on the highest rank that I held, which is captain.
Okay.
And that's why I retired as captain.
Okay. Is there anything else that maybe I didn't ask that you want to share about your time in Thailand, or just your thoughts on the war, just anything in general?
Well, Thailand, there was a large amount of bases that all had military aircraft in there. And one thing I really didn't touch on, the job of a ground control intercept operator, I told you it was like a glorified air traffic controller. We would have as many, each controller, and it could be 5 or 6 of us in a control room at the same time, have 30 aircraft per controller on frequency at the same time. That's a lot to concentrate on. And so we had, has anybody ever seen a movie, War Room, or what's it called? Anyway, it was a duplicate almost exactly of what we saw in Vietnam, with personnel behind a huge plexiglass map of Thailand and North Vietnam and everything, and people would draw arrows of aircraft and their tail numbers and everything, and it was up to the controller to tell that person what to do with that aircraft and where it was going, and keep track of them. So it really was very intense, believe it. I mean, you could have 100 aircraft with us in a control room, under control at one time, airborne or returning. And all the B-52s that were launched from Utapao to drop bombs, in our Kayai, we were the main controlling center for that launch.
So was that intensity like a daily thing, or was
Oh,
it
yeah.
every
No,
day just
absolutely,
stressful like
every
that?
day,
Okay.
every day.
So you didn't really get a lot of downtime.
We went 24/7, and we worked 12-hour shifts. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
No,
So
no.
did
It
you-
is just, people don't understand how intense air traffic control can be.
Would there be men that maybe couldn't handle the stress sometimes?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And what would happen to men like that? Would they?
Well, they would need downtime, and other people would have to fill in, you know. And of course, that meant double shifts and everything else. So, no, it was never easy. And, definitely, it captured your imagination sometimes, is how many things could go wrong and never did because of proper control.
Was that a fear that you had a lot, that you would maybe
I didn't ever have a
inadvertently
fear
cause
of that.
something? Okay.
No. We never even broached that subject ever. We just looked for better methods, better control.
What was a fear that you had while you were over there? Did you have fears of anything in particular?
Well, the only fear that I ever had, and the only time I was ever issued a automatic weapon, M16, was when the Taikong wanted to overrun our site. So the actual operational part of the mission, we never had a fear of it at all. We had an intense focus and, let's say, realization that, hey, without us helping them and guiding them and keeping them safe, they wouldn't have any other method of doing that. And so our job as ground control intercept operators or air traffic controllers was to keep them safe in the sky from mid-air collisions, other aircraft going in or out, things like that. And so, yeah, it was pretty intense sometimes.
If you could go back in time, would you do it all over again?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's good. Good.
No, I went back from Thailand as an instructor to the main base in Florida for 1 year.
Okay.
And then went to navigator school in California, and then went on to fours in Okinawa, then on to B-52s, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah.
Have you ever flown privately, like on your own?
No, my brother did, but I never really had the craving to do that. I just didn't, I aced every aeronautical test that they ever gave me, and I was offered in navigator school to become a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, of course. And of course, the mortality rate that was 50% at the time.
Yeah.
So I said, no thanks.
Smart
But it was a direct request, and they would have literally sent us right from navigator school to helicopter school, right then and there.
So after you retire in '86, what was your career after that?
80s. Oh,
Yeah, after you leave the Air Force, what did you do?
really? Oh my gosh. I owned a child care center in Colorado Springs. That's where I retired at,
Oh, okay.
Colorado Springs. And I also became a securities salesman, if you would, and worked with a large insurance company. Ultimately, in '92, my brother had a series of heart attacks in California, and I had just gone through a divorce and said I would go and help him, and my son came with me, and he graduated high school out there. I continued with a handyman business for 13 years in California, and then came here.
All right. And then you've been here since.
Yes.
Nice. All right. Well, I don't have any other questions for you. I did want to see if you two had anything you wanted to know about his service that maybe I didn't ask, so feel free to hop
There's
in
so
with
much
me
to
today.
take in.
Did
It's
you
just-
have direct contact with, say, F4s that were doing runs, or did you?
Yes. Yeah. But we had, they have what they call a handoff position, if you would. And that's where they reach their target area or mission area, and that they control on their own. Then on the way out, they look for our control again, because they know and they knew that we were the way to get them safely home, but we are also the way to get them safely there. I don't know if you I remember one type of aircraft that we control were F-105s. If you don't know, the famous nickname of a F-105 is a Thunder Thud, and it doesn't fly well when anything is wrong with it. And it's also one of the heaviest loads of a fighter type with bombs. So it was used for tactical bombing. Well, our mission was to help them recover, and they had more troubles than any of the other Century aircraft that were out over there at the time. But I do know that it's just something that we accepted as a daily chore, something part of our mission. And so we never thought of it as anything bad. We just thought of it as necessary. And so it was it was a good experience, really. I did make many friends over there, and I'm talking about Thai friends now. And I don't think that same thing could be said for many of my counterparts in Vietnam. There was two. There was not enough time to really get to know and interact with them. Same way when I was stationed in Korea, it was also not possible to get all of that.
There might have also been trust issues too, like if you're trusting, if are they Viet Cong?
That could be.
Or, you don't really know.
Very much.
Yeah.
Very much. I do know that I was offered the hand of two lovely maidens in hand in marriage in Thailand, and that was from the father, who was a banker down in Bangkok, and I turned him down graciously, but I couldn't figure out how graciously to do that. One was 16 years old and the other was 18.
Well,
I did remain pen pals with one of them when I went to university for
Oh,
a
that's
while.
nice.
Yeah,
so what I'm going to take away from this is I need to go visit Thailand at some point. I've never
Thailand
visited Thailand.
is truly a wondrous country. It really is. And I've been in Malaysia and Thailand. I haven't been into Vietnam itself. I mean, other than flying over it. And believe it or not, my Vietnam service ribbon is because I flew over it, not because I was on the ground. No, there's many encounters I've had with the people that live there that were just wonderful. And Thailand is definitely a wonderful place.
Have you been back to visit?
No, but that has been on my list. When I was in Okinawa, I got one visit, but a very short one, in Bangkok. And I went to Malaysia from Okinawa, I went to Bali, I went to Australia, New Zealand, Hawaii, Philippines, etc., etc. So I had quite, and of course Korea. Korea, I would spend a third of my tour from Okinawa into Korea, and so every third week or so we would be deployed to Korea. So I got to know Koreans very well there also. They were also great people. I enjoyed their company, and very. We were assigned at a base in Korea called Daegu, and we shared the base with the Korean counterparts. Every morning, the Korean counterparts would be out on their portion of the field practicing jiu-jitsu and taekwondo and all the other martial art things that they did. We wouldn't have stood a chance against them. And if you didn't know, the Republic of Korea were the most feared contingents of the North Vietnamese.
I believe that because Koreans did fight in Vietnam.
Oh yeah, but they were the most feared because they didn't take any prisoners. I mean, literally, they did not take any prisoners. So they encounter with the rocks, we call them, ROKs.
Yeah.
They were fearless, and you could see that in the people as I met them in the training in South Korea, and so that was really interesting. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all your information with us today.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
I don't know, it's not classified anymore, but I mentioned that camera that we had. It was called a Blivit.
Blivit.
B-L-E-V-I-T, a Blivit camera. It was a pod on the belly. It took the place of the centerline tank on the F4, RF4, and it had a very, very long range camera that was cooled by liquid nitrogen. It could take clear pictures up to 60 miles. And that's what we did on the DMC. Antagonize the SAM, make them activate their SAM sites. We aim the camera at the SAM site and we take the picture. So
I wonder how much the photography technology has advanced since then.
well, it's
More
satellite.
satellite, right?
It's satellite.
Yeah.
This was the cream de la cream of cameras that we had.
So they probably wouldn't, modern military doesn't use cameras on planes anymore, or is it
Nope.
just all satellite based?
Well, they do use cameras, but not for the same reason we did. We did tactical. I had 6 cameras aboard the RF-4, and all those, not including the special cameras, but all those cameras could be activated at one time and take pictures 180 degrees out and in front and below, all at the same time. And then we take the mission would to come back and help the ground crew download the film, take it to the site within 15 minutes. We had the film developed and ready to look at.
That's wildly fast for the 70s.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was quite an operation. And our outfit in Okinawa won 2 meritorious service medals while I was there because of our support in Vietnam and in Korea.
Excellent.
That's great.
Yeah. So your story here really shows people that in times of war, it's more than just people on the ground. There's
Oh.
people all over the place, in the air, on the
And-
ground, in different countries supporting the war effort.
And with that support, you can't have any kind of a war, if you want to call it that, without the support. And the support is usually much stronger in workforce than the actual combatants by many, many times. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you want to share that we may not have covered?
No, I've reached all the good stuff.
All the good stuff, all the good
You know
bits.
what, Kid, if you don't mind, could you just share real quick with Lola about the story you shared with Sherry and I about your hospital visit, that one touching hospital visit with Lola?
With
Maybe it was Lily.
It was Lily.
Lily.
It was
Sorry.
a remarkable miracle. It really,
Yeah.
truly was. My Lily was a golden retriever, very people-oriented. I won't say Lola is not, but she's more devoted strictly to me than with other people. But I had a regular weekly visit to the Tucson Hospital, University Medical Center in Tucson. And as we would work in our schedule, they would know we're coming, of course. And when we check in each week, if there was a special need, someone would meet us at the check-in counter, and they would take us to wherever we needed to go. Well, one day we went there, and Lily was requested to visit a gentleman who had a car accident and a traumatic brain injury and had 1/4 of his brain removed. And so they had him there for almost 2 weeks, and after the surgery, with no response whatsoever. So a nurse met us at the counter and said, "We need you to come with us to ICU and visit this gentleman." And I never knew their names or anything, so it's not important. The important part was he was fed only through IV. He would have a dead stare straight ahead for almost 2 weeks. Yes, girl. Yeah, I know. It's okay. For almost 2 weeks, and they wanted to see what a dog would do interacting with him to help him recover. And so they picked Lily because her nickname was the angel dog down at the hospital. And she always wore a halo, a gossamer halo headband. And so here she was, Lily, coming in the hospital, and we go to the ICU, and then one of the nurses, we get to the room, and there's 2 doctors and 3 nurses there. And so we don't usually have an audience when we do something like this, but one of the nurses was dedicated to come over and help me with Lily. And Lily literally could be put in bed with a person, anybody, and we put a towel down and Lily would be put on bed, and the nurse wanted so that the man's hand would rest on the head of Lily. So we did that, and she started talking to him at the same time, moved his hand back and forth through Lily's hair on the head, and that lasted for about 30 seconds or so, and finally he started moving his own hand through the hair. And so that happened, and then the next thing, he kept moving his hand. He looked where his hand was going. And so this actually kept progressing until he smiled. And so they just thought, no, this man just had no recollection of anything, and IVs could not do it. Alone. He couldn't stay on an IV his whole life. So anyway, the next thing you know, he's not just smiling, he's laughing. And oh my gosh, I don't know how many seconds passed, but he started verbalizing and talking. And oh my gosh, the nurses were crying, the doctors were clapping. It was wonderful. It was
amazing moment. Animals are amazing.
And they can touch your soul, and that's what happened. And I've had children encounters that were not as dramatic, but equally rewarding because they could relate, and they could, I truly think anybody who's got a wonderful dog and has the time should get their dog certified as a therapy dog and work with people.
Yeah.
And not necessarily children, but people. Yeah. And there is a requirement as a therapy dog that you actually get proper licensing or certification, because with that comes a liability insurance.
Yeah.
And you pay a yearly cost for that, but $25 a year is not that much, and it covers $100,000 in liability. Well, my whole crux of the matter is, please, if you know somebody that has the inclination and time and has a wonderful dog, have them get their dog certified as a therapy dog.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story.
Yeah.
I would do the same thing for Lola, but I would be relegated right now to only senior living centers or something like that. But that's not that it can't be done. It's just there's quite a bit to it, and I definitely would like to.
One more shot of Lola and Preston.
She's totally relaxed now. There is so much to life that is worth sharing and living, and I hate to see people depressed and where they don't see a way out. And it's something that I know it doesn't have to be, and every day I encounter somebody who relates to Lola, and I've already done that, this morning,
Yeah, you sure
in the
did.
store, not here, but in the store when I was at Fry's. I can't go out anywhere anymore, without her being part of my life, and I always make her sit, and that's a release position, is sitting, and people then can come over and pet her. And boy, she today was very loving, and every time someone pet her, she would push her head into their hand, or just want to be there.
Well, she's a celebrity where
Oh,
he's
yeah.
at anyway. In Casa Grande, right?
Oh,
She's
yeah.
a celebrity. Everyone
Yeah.
knows Lola.
Everyone knows Lola,
She's being a very good girl today
so
and every day.
Yeah, she's a good girl.
I'm glad you told me your history, because I understand more fully now why you do what you do, and appreciate it. I mean that. I really do.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that.
I'm blushing now. So.
No, both
All right.
of
Well,
them.
I'm going to stop that. Thank you so